Today we've got a very special guest joining us, Hardy Pace from Play Asia. Hardy, thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be here, guys.
Now, I'm sure most of our audience is aware, but just in case, tell us about Play Asia and their mission.
Well, Play Asia is first and foremost a video game import company. We've been around for over 15 years now. Starting off as our main focus was Japanese import, and the physical games that Japan brings us. The progression of Play Asia and the mission of Play Asia has always been the ability for video gamers, regardless of their location, their region, so on, they should have access to video games, right, that they want to play. And that's pretty much the mission statement in a lot of ways of Play Asia, is that these gamers should have the ability to play these games. Like, there's really very few excuses why they shouldn't have a game available to them, whether that's a game that's only released in Japan and they want to import it, or a variety of other reasons, including censorship and so on. We just think that it's super important to make sure that video gamers have all this access.
What is your role with them, and how did you get started?
Currently, right now, I kind of have a mixed bag of a role. I do a little bit of community management, a little bit of the marketing. My main role, though, is the heading of the Play Exclusives line right now. That entails working very closely with East Asia Soft to coordinate our releases, to handle the distribution for those releases, and to generally make sure that high quality product is produced, and on our end, the distribution is as seamless as possible.
When you started off with them, was your role different? Were you doing something different with them?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes. East Asia Soft, obviously, I think when we did the limited release of Soldner X2, it was kind of an experimental thing, of course, but we had great reception, especially from the Vita community at the time. It just kind of inspired us to keep going, right? As long as people were enjoying the games and wanted the games that we were putting out, it just made sense to keep doing that. And obviously, I think any video game company being able to produce video games, especially like high quality physical games, is kind of like a dream come true, right? Because we can sell the games, but if we can have a bigger hand in that process, it's just it's much more fulfilling for us. It's just it's better overall if we can really focus on what people want and make that a reality.
So a big part of what attracts our listeners, or a lot of our listeners, to Play Asia is that relationship with East Asia Soft, and just recently we began to see Switch exclusives from East Asia Soft and Play Asia, which is great. How exciting is it to be coming over to the hottest device right now?
It's amazing, actually. I mean, the run up to it, it's you kind of have you get all your data together, and you look at sales data, digital sales data, physical game sales data. Because we have the benefit of being Play Asia, so we can look at all the games that we're selling, right? We can look at all the platforms that are moving, and we know which games are popular and on which platform they're popular. So it was just the lead up to announcing games and signing games for the Switch and so on. Like, this is just very exciting because we know that a lot of people right now want Switch games, right? I think we're not necessarily in a bit of a Switch drought or anything like that right now, but releases are a little bit slower than probably most of us would like. It's great to meaningfully add to this library, especially in such a crucial stage of the console's lifespan.
I agree. And at the time of this interview, we already know about Dimension Drive, which recently shipped and will likely be in everyone's hands by the time they hear this. But during that open order period, there was a strategy change for the amount of cartridges to be produced. I think originally the standard copy of the game was going to be listed as an open pre-order. And can you kind of help our listeners understand the shift in that approach?
Yeah, of course. The situation with Dimension Drive was honestly pretty straightforward. We'd set out to print 5,000 units from the start and opted to test open pre-orders, with the opportunity to add quantity, because we didn't want to immediately put a limit on the amount of people, who had the opportunity to enter our Switch collection. We had quite a few people messaging us and saying, please leave orders a little bit open a little bit longer. I really want to buy this game and so on. And at the end of the day, we had unallocated copies that existed, and we aren't really into this to create rare games. But really our goal is to allow gamers to own physical copies of the games that are in demand.
The limited print market is an ever-growing space. And what struck most people with your step into the Switch world was that the game was cheaper than most retail releases, and you offered free shipping. Will this continue to be the trend, or was this just part of your explosion onto the scene?
So the $24.99 standard edition and the $34.99 sort of limited edition model is something that we are going to be viewing as a goal moving forward for most of our releases. That's kind of, say we view it as our baseline, right? There are for sure going to be releases that go above this, and that's essentially because they have to. Either the game is sold digitally at one price, so we can't really go much. We have to at least match that. We can't really go lower than that, especially when you look at it from the developer's perspective or the license holder's perspective. It will be the trend. Yeah, so we'll continue with that trend for the foreseeable future, especially the free shipping that will stay around for all the releases going forward. If it's viable, the price will be $34.99 for limited edition, $24.99 for the standard, and slightly higher with certain releases that it makes sense to do because of the royalty costs and so on like this.
Do you guys have a certain number of releases that you hope to maintain, or even a total number that you hope to release by the end of the Switch cycle?
We're not really thinking about it as a total number. I think we just want to keep up a steady flow of good games. That's more of our objective than kind of like an end number or anything like that. Our release schedule is probably going to be looking at like maybe on average one a month. I don't know if we'll always meet that target, but I think on average, well, that's probably what we're looking at for Switch games.
So obviously the titles themselves are a closely guarded secret, but can you tell our listeners roughly how many titles you already have signed for publishing at this point?
I can't say the full amount just because I know that East Asia Soft will probably come after me.
Understood.
But we have in 2018, I think we'll probably have around 3 to 4 more games coming out. That's not a concrete number or anything like that, but
sure.
That's around about what we should be looking at.
But that's a positive thing for us to hear, is that you guys already have a lot working, to come this direction. So
we'll mark it down as more than 1, but less than 1,000.
Something in there. Yeah. That's a ballpark range.
Can we get just under 1,000 in 2018? I think people might have a hard time affording that, even at the low price of $24.99.
Yeah, we might get some complaints. Among
your signed games, will we see a variety of genre, or is there like an obvious majority present, like shmups?
That's actually that's a good question, because the first 3 games in our collection so far probably all share the same genre, right? That's the sort of the theme. That we had Dimension Drive, and then we had Shikondo Soul Eater, and we'll be announcing a third game very very soon. And all of those are shmups. And then after the third shmup releases, we'll have sort of a different. I don't know how I would phrase it. We'll have a different set of game type, shall we say? That's kind of how we view it going forward. Trying to give it a little bit more rhyme or reason to the games that we release and the order that we release them and so on like this. So right now you're seeing a lot of shmups out of East Asia Soft and the Play Exclusives line, but there will be variety going forward for sure.
And you mentioned Shikondo Soul Eater, which was already put up for sale. Now that was a bit out of order due to the PS4 release kind of happening simultaneously. Is this simultaneous release something you're striving to do with future potential exclusives?
Yeah, essentially we learned when we were selling the Dimension Drive for the PlayStation 4, we had a pretty good idea that we were going to be doing Switch, but it just really wasn't ready for to present to customers and to actually put on sale at the time. And I think we were a little bit disappointed in that, because it's nice to be able to pick up both, or for customers to, have the actual full view of what to expect, so they can, make choices for themselves. So, when we put Shikondo on order for PS4, I think I made it a pretty high priority of mine to try to make sure that the Switch would be ready to go on sale at the same time. Obviously, we're going to have different production, schedules for both those games, but I think it worked out quite well. a lot of people ended up buying both.
And speaking of the PS4, as a community manager for such a popular company, you've probably seen a lot of things happening throughout your experience on the PS4 side with those exclusives. Are there differences in your experience from what you've seen with that community to kind of what you're seeing with the Switch community? Is there anything that stands out as a general kind of difference between the two?
From a collector perspective, I think you see a lot less sort of like PS4 collectors. You don't really see a lot of full set collectors, right? I mean, the library is just insane. So like the way they prioritize which games they buy is much more on a game by game basis. That's for PlayStation 4 users. Whereas like a Nintendo Switch collector, especially in the current sort of climate, in the current stage of its life, they're a lot more focused on getting all the games that are coming out and building like a really nice collection. I think a lot of people are excited by getting in sort of at the ground floor with game collecting, getting into the Switch. And I think that's a really important sort of aspect of the community. Whereas PS4, you still have these, big collectors, people who love collecting PS4 games. I mean, there's tons of amazing PS4 games, but you generally don't see those like full set collectors or people just buying like all games that are coming out. You kind of have that difference between the two communities.
One of the things that PlayAsia is known for with the PS4 is sometimes making games available with English that would otherwise be censored in other markets. And I have a feeling that might be a bit difficult with the Switch, as Nintendo has historically had a negative view towards more mature content. So what's your take on that?
We are optimistic. Obviously, I think you're very much correct that they definitely have a historical viewpoint. But I think Nintendo has relaxed a little bit. We're seeing, certain things. We're seeing their attitude be a little bit more relaxed overall. But that hurdle is still there with Nintendo. Obviously, they have quite a family-centric overall marketing and presentation of their brand. So it's hard to really convince them that XYZ game should really be on their platform. Yeah, it's pretty much you're pretty much correct in saying that it's a little bit more difficult for the Switch. Not impossible because Nintendo is coming around, but it's definitely much more work than doing anything with the PlayStation.
So, are you a collector yourself? And if so, what do you focus on?
The best collection out there, the Play exclusives. But
Get that.
Of course. I've always just collected just games that I think are good. I've never really been one for like a full set or really trying to achieve anything specific with my collection. I just think that if a game is good, I want to have it, I want to own it, and I want it to be accessible to me, whether I have an internet connection or not.
Do you have like a favorite system or a favorite game you could share with us?
Virtual Boy.
Favorite game? I'm not sure. I mean, my favorite system right now is definitely the Switch. I mean, that's this console that I'm spending most of my time on. I mean, it's new. It's got awesome stuff. It's got Zelda. Zelda's probably been like the biggest time sink for me right now on the Switch. As much time as I can actually put into it. It's I still haven't finished it yet because the sad truth is when you work in video games, sometimes you don't have as much time to play them as you'd like, but you get there eventually.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shame. That whole conundrum. When we kind of looked at your previous experience in the gaming industry, you had some esports marketing in there. And what would you say the main difference you've noticed between selling, say, for an esports brand over selling for a publisher brand?
There are some big differences, and of course some similarities, as there's a decent audience overlap. Esports is very much like traditional sports in that you're building a fan base or community that you entertain in exchange for advertising to them. A lot of the community building aspects are similar, but I think it mostly ends there.
So because of that kind of makes my next question even more interesting, I think. And this could be a really easy answer. It might even be a little bit complex. Does PlayAsia dabble in the esports world at all, since it's such a big market in Asia?
Not too much, to be honest. We've explored it a little bit in the past. I think in 2014 we actually sponsored Apex, the Smash tournament. But it's kind of just trying to. We haven't really found that our audience super aligns with the esports audience overall, but we do. I think I personally really enjoy esports, so it's something I've been trying to push down the line. Something that players are doing something in the esports space. Very likely, maybe the fighting game space would probably be the best candidate for that. I see it as a possibility, but not in the near future. It's just it takes a big budget to do anything meaningful in that space, and we're not really at the point where we feel confident enough to take that leap.
So what can you tell our audience about the process that PlayAsia goes through to source some of their games?
We pretty much source everything that we can, if you mean just from a general PlayAsia.com perspective. If people are after a particular product, or we know people will be after that product, we just make sure that we order more. We have a pretty good idea of what the majority of our audience or our market wants to have released or to have available to them. And, we always do our best to make that happen. It can be a bit of a struggle sometimes for certain game titles and, the PR or whatever that comes with it. But, at the end of the day, we'd really like to, stand by what we've always stood by, which is, making sure that gamers have access to the games that they want to play.
Do you guys deal mostly with game development out of the Asian market, or have you been approached by developers in like the States who are just looking for somebody to publish their game?
We get reached out by people all over the world. There's probably more of a Eurocentric trend in the amount of developers and publishers that we've worked with, but we're not really looking at just one region at all. It's whatever region the game came from that we enjoyed.
What about sourcing of your standard distribution of games, things that you're not necessarily publishing, but you have a very wide variety of games from all around the world. What does it take to source all of that?
It takes a lot of manpower and dedication and a good system for it. No, I mean, really, we have, I think at this point, we have probably almost like around 70 employees or so at PlayAsia. So a large portion of these people working with us are putting a lot of effort into working with various distributing partners all around the world. As essentially, we have just a massive database of these products, the information for these products, where to buy these products and so on like this. And that helps us to stay on top of everything. It's just a constant task to stay on board, stay above, board with everything.
How much of a role does fan desire play into what PlayAsia sources?
It definitely plays a role. I think it's not the end all be all of our decision making process. I think, like I said, the first thing is the game is worth playing. The game is fun. If a lot of the fans want a game, we can almost guarantee that that's the case about the game, that they all want to play it and they all are going to enjoy it because probably they've already played it digitally, right? So if fans all want this game, it's probably going to light a fire in our asses to go chase that license. It's not going to always happen, and we're not going to always agree with the fans, but it's almost always going to make us look a little bit deeper into the opportunity.
And I noticed that there's some, let's say, more adult items for sale on your website. I'm not even sure I have a question about that so much as a statement.
Yeah, tons of different things. I mean, we sell a bunch of stuff from Japan. It's I mean, I don't know what you mean by adult. I think most people call it like we'll name the figures and so on like this as some of the more adult items on our website. But yeah, we carry anything that we think that people enjoy and are enjoying.
When you offer fan service, you get a wider customer. So you get a wider customer plane.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So are there any particularly interesting or peculiar legal hurdles that you have to deal with when you're dealing with so many countries?
Really, it's just respecting the distribution wishes of, for example, Sony or something like this, right? Certain games you we just have to avoid certain regions. We try to minimize that in every aspect, and it affects like such a small percentage of our overall product catalog on the website. But we do adhere to certain aspects of this, and it's just making sure that we're on top of it. But really, at the end of the day, the vast majority of games, we have no problems. We run into very little problems with general import, export, and distribution around the world. If we have to make any changes or any restrictions, it's on not even like 0.5% of our overall products.
Is it true that you speak some German?
Nur ein bisschen.
So I was kind of hoping maybe you could put that to some use to make some of the German market exclusives a little bit more accessible to the rest of the world. And I'll give you, for instance, it can be very difficult to pick up some of the games such as the Market Technic releases.
It's definitely something I can look into more. I mean, we have actually a lot of Germans working at PlayAsia, and then also East Asia Soft, actually. So definitely not out of the question to, at the very least, have that conversation.
Yeah, we've seen a number of releases, games, and unfortunately, in some cases, it's a little bit of shovelware, but things from, say, UIG, Market Technic, that type of thing, and they've pretty much sourced only out of companies like Media Market or Saturn.de, that type of thing, which can be a little bit tough for the rest of the world to get to. People have to use things like a mail forwarder, which basically becomes cumbersome because now we're spreading ourselves out to try to get these releases. It would be great to have another source like PlayAsia to be able to pick up some of those types of games. So I think, some people would appreciate it if you'd look into that.
I can definitely have that conversation. I'll let you know how fruitful it is.
Specifically, the guy who asked that question, he would be very, very So,
I've figured out how to get my games.
You just have to wait an extra long time. We've kind of gone over with the genre question about the games that are coming out soon, but is there anything else that you can share with everyone about what might be coming in the future?
I can say perhaps that we have some retro-inspired titles on the horizon in a way. That's probably all I can say at the moment.
Hey, that's a great thing to hear, though. I think some people will like to hear that.
Yeah, the retro stuff's going crazy right now with Bloodstained and all that stuff. Like on the horizon, like it's going. Everybody's loving the retro.
There's been some good games coming out. Yeah.
Okay, so that ends the normal questions. Do you have anything else you want to ask, Sol?
No. I can't wait to hear his answer to the next one, though.
Okay, so generally when we have these interviews, we try to we have 20 or so real questions, and then we have one bonus question that's usually not directly related to what's going on. It's just kind of like a funny question. The question that we dug up for you is that it's been established that the protagonist of Metroid is Samus, who is a human, or at the very least is a human type being. So the question I have is, how does transitioning into the Morph Ball, which is 0.8 meters in diameter, not crush all of her internal organs?
Video game magic, I guess. I don't. I'm sure there's a wiki page somewhere that's got you covered, right? I mean, I would say
we've tasked you with answering this. The entire
this one, were you?
That's right. The entire gaming world is hinging on this answer from you now, Hardy.
I'd say she just does it very carefully.
That's a safe answer. Yeah,
that works for me.
That's a safe answer. Well, Hardy, I think our listeners are probably super excited to see what you guys have coming. We very much appreciate you being on the show.
It's great to be here and talk to you guys.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back at some point in the future after you guys have had a few more of these exclusives come out, and maybe we could see what else is coming down the road after we know a little bit more from you.
Yeah, we'll have more news soon. A nondescript soon, unfortunately, but they are coming. We are working on those things very hard and every day. Yeah, we have tons of great games, and I'd love to come back and talk about them. When I'm able to talk about them, really.
Definitely let us know, and we'll have you back on the show. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.